Harry and Meghan Markle's surrogacy scandal has entered the mainstream media domain.
Being christened. Why would they use a title for their children that represents an institution they loathe so much?
Well, Harry and Meghan have never provided any evidence for that highly incendiary claim.
Tonight, something serious is unfolding, and honestly, this is not just another royal story you can ignore, because the more you listen, the more intense it becomes, and at the same time, the more questions start to rise. So stay with me to the very end, because what you are about to hear could completely change how you see the royal family. Tonight, the silence is finally broken, and Piers Morgan is now revealing what he calls a secret investigation into Archie and Lilibet. And at the same time, Meghan is reportedly in panic mode as claims surface about a born-of-the-body legal issue that could change the royal family of succession forever. So, Meghan Markle is said to be in serious distress because the one man she feared most has now crossed a line that many believe would never be crossed. And now, Piers Morgan has allegedly opened up a major investigation that does not just question the Sussexes, but also challenges the legitimacy of Archie and Lilibet's place in the royal family. And this is no longer just tabloid gossip. Instead, it is being framed as a deep investigation into birth records, legal inconsistencies, and documents that could potentially change everything in one moment. So, this is being described as a point where everything starts to break open, and at the same time, it is being presented as an investigation that the palace supposedly tried to keep hidden, but is now being brought into the public. For years, these discussions stayed in quiet corners of the internet, and people talked about the theories, questions around surrogacy, and timelines that didn't seem to match. But now, those quiet conversations are becoming louder and spreading everywhere, and Piers Morgan is no longer just asking questions. Instead, he is presenting what he describes as a dossier, focusing on the born-of-the-baby rule, which is an old British legal principle that determines who qualifies for royalty. So, if what he claims turns out to be true, then this wouldn't just be a public relations issue. Instead, it could turn into a legal issue affecting royal status itself. In this report, the focus is on different pieces of information that includes missing signatures on birth announcements, legal actions happening behind the scenes, and claims about documents connected to royal records. So, questions are now being raised. Why were certain signatures missing? And why are discussions happening around laws that could affect royal titles? And because of all this, people are being told to stay until the end, because another claim involves a supposed internal memo and how King Charles III react to it. And according to this narrative, once everything is revealed, things may not go back to how they were. Now, the search for the truth is often seen as obsession, but in the case of Piers Morgan, it is being described as a long-standing mission. For years, he has been one of the strongest critics of Meghan Markle, but what is different now is that the focus is shifting from opinions to legal and procedural questions. So instead of just criticizing, he is now pointing at the structure of the monarchy itself. To understand this situation, people are looking at his influence. In the US, he is a controversial figure, but in the UK, many people see him as someone defending the integrity of the monarchy. And his argument is simple. If someone uses royal titles, then they should also follow royal rules. So by raising questions about birth records, he is creating a clash between privacy and public accountability. And this is not just about personal dislike anymore. Instead, it focuses on the legal meaning of born of the body. In the UK, for a child to be in line of succession, they must be born into the royal family, and the birth must be properly recorded and verified. In the past, This was just a normal process, but with the successes, everything appeared more private than usual. So according to the private narrative, that level of privacy is now being questioned, and Piers Morgan is asking a key question. If everything is clear, then why are basic records not full visible? This changes how people see the decision, because before, the successes were often viewed as victims of media pressure, but now the narrative is shifting. In this version, they are seen as usual royal status while also avoiding certain expectations. And this is what has brought the conversation from online discussion into mainstream media. Now, the focus moves from opinions to documents. In the UK, royal birth registration is not just personal, it is also constitutional. But in this case, the records of Archie and Lilibet are being described as unusual compared to the past royal births. Traditionally, royal births are announced with official documents signed by doctors, but in Archie's case, it has been pointed out that those signatures were not properly shown. And while the palace said this was for privacy, critics argue that public titles require public verification. Then, there is the birth certificate change, where Meghan's name was reportedly adjusted, and this has raised more questions about why that has changed. Now, with Lilibet's birth in California, things become even more complex because different legal systems are involved, and this creates a situation where UK rules and US rules may not fully match. So people are asking, if there are differences between the two systems, what does that mean for the royal status? And at the same time, it is more important to be clear than having different records or being mentioned in documents does not automatically mean wrongdoing. That distinction matters. But the conversation continues to grow, and more attention is being placed on details that were previously ignored, and now the discussion has moved into mainstream media. For years, these topics stayed online, but now major outlets are starting to ask questions about transparency. And that shift is significant because once mainstream media gets involved, the story reaches a much wider audience, and because of that, pressure increases. Now, the decision is also being connected to legal rules about royal titles. In the UK, titles are just symbolic. They are tied to laws and historical rules. One of those rules comes from 1917, which defines who qualifies for royal titles. And at the center of this discussion in the phrase "born of the body," the rule exists to prevent disputes over royal lineage. So the argument being raised is simple. If the process was not followed exactly, what does that mean legally? If a surrogate was involved, which is legal in places like California, it could create complications under UK royal rules. And this is why the discussion is becoming more serious, because it moves from opinion into legal territory. There is also talk about possible change to laws that could allow titles to be removed, but at the same time, it is being suggested that if rules were not met, titles might not need to be removed. They could simply be considered invalid. And this is why the situation is being described as serious, because it affects not just reputation but legal standing. Now, inside Buckingham Palace, things are reportedly very quiet, and the silence is being seen as a tragedy, because by not responding, the palace avoids giving attention to the claims. At the same time, it also puts pressure on the other side to respond first. So while the public sees silence behind the scenes, there may be discussion happening, and everything now depends on what happened next. So now the big question is this: after everything you have just heard, do you think there is any truth to these claims, or do you believe this is all speculation being blown out of proportion? But let me know what you think in the comment. because this conversation is clearly not over. And if you found this interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned because more updates are definitely coming. See you in the next one.